Imagine winning the biggest award of your life, your heart racing, your classmates cheering, only to turn and see your own father staring at you with eyes as cold as stone. That was the night I realized the person who was supposed to love me the most had already erased me. If you've ever dreamed of breaking free from someone who tried to control you, smash that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because this is one of the most painfully satisfying revenge stories you'll ever hear. Imagine standing on a stage, holding an award that you poured your entire heart into. The crowd is cheering, your classmates are smiling, your teachers are glowing with pride. But when you look for the one person who should be the proudest, your own father, you see nothing. Not pride, not love, just cold, unshakable silence. That was the night I realized my father never wanted me to shine. If you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or told you weren't enough, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's dive into one of the most emotional yet satisfying revenge stories you'll hear today. I was 16 when I finally understood the truth. My house wasn't a home, it was a cage. From the outside, people admired my father. They called him wise, disciplined, a man of honor. Neighbors would greet him with respect. Relatives would whisper about his strength and values. But behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. To me, he wasn't a father, he was a ruler. Every choice I made wasn't really mine. He decided what clothes I wore, who I could speak to, how I should sit, even when it was appropriate to smile. And I, his daughter, was expected to obey without question. I remember evenings when my friends would laugh and share their dreams about the future, becoming doctors, teachers, artists, or even travelers. And me, I stayed quiet because I knew what would happen if I dared to speak of my dreams. The few times I tried, my father's voice cut through me like a knife. Girls don't argue, girls don't question, girls don't dream. Those weren't just words. They became walls, walls that locked me inside, walls that kept me small. But deep down I wanted more. I wanted to be seen as more than just an obedient daughter who never raised her voice. I wanted him to notice that I was more than just a shadow in his kingdom. And for a while, I believed that maybe, just maybe, if I worked hard enough, he would finally see me. That chance came at my school's annual ceremony. I had spent weeks preparing for it, pouring every ounce of my heart into an essay competition. I stayed up late, scribbling drafts under the dim glow of a study lamp, writing with every bit of hope I carried inside me. The essay wasn't just words, it was me. My thoughts, my soul, my dreams, all pressed between lines of ink. The day of the ceremony, my stomach twisted with nerves. I sat in the auditorium, clutching my notebook like a lifeline, silently praying that my name would be called. And then it happened. And the first prize goes to... I heard my name. For a moment, the world blurred. The applause rang in my ears, my classmates cheering, my teachers smiling with pride. My legs trembled as I walked across that stage, but inside me, something bloomed. For the first time in so long, I felt alive. I held that certificate, that small token of recognition, and all I wanted was to see it reflected in my father's eyes. Just one smile, one nod, one sign that he was proud. I scanned the crowd, my heart pounding with excitement, searching for him. And there he was. But his face was stone. No smile, no clapping, no warmth. Just cold, unshakable silence. His hands rested on his lap, motionless, as if my victory meant nothing. In that single moment, the applause around me faded. The joy that filled my chest drained away like water through cracked glass. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he just didn't show emotion in public. Maybe later, in the car, he'd tell me he was proud. That hope carried me through the rest of the ceremony. But deep down, a heaviness had already settled inside me. The car ride was silent for a while. The trophy sat on my lap, glimmering in the faint streetlights, like a fragile piece of proof that I mattered. Finally, I gathered the courage to speak. Did you see? I won. My voice cracked with timid hope. He didn't look at me. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. And then he said words that shattered me more than any punishment ever could. All this doesn't matter. Girls don't need trophies. They need to learn obedience. I cannot put into words the pain of that moment. It wasn't just disappointment. It was erasure, as if everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of, every word I had written, it all vanished with a single sentence. I stared at him, waiting for some sign that maybe he didn't mean it, that maybe he'd soften. But his face was set, cold, unyielding. That was the night I realized his greatest injustice wasn't the rules, the punishments, or the restrictions. It was the love he refused to give. After that day, something inside me broke. I stopped trying to win his approval. I stopped sharing my dreams with him. I stopped searching his face for pride. Instead, I buried my laughter. I locked away my words. Silence became my shield. But here's the thing about silence. It isn't always weakness. Sometimes silence is survival. And in that silence, something unexpected began to grow. Strength. Every time he silenced me, I learned to listen to my own heart. Every time he denied me love, I promised myself I would never deny it to anyone else. I didn't know it yet, but the very pain he caused me was slowly shaping me into someone he could never control. Looking back now, I see that 16-year-old girl standing on that stage, holding her essay like it was proof she existed. And though her father tried to erase her with his silence, she didn't disappear. Because sometimes the deepest wounds don't destroy us. Sometimes they give us wings. In Chapter 1, I told you how my father erased my dreams, silenced my voice, and turned my home into a cage. But what he didn't realize was this. Every time he tried to break me, he was actually building something he could never control. And in Chapter 2, you'll see how his greatest injustice became my greatest revenge. After that night in the car, I stopped trying. At least that's what he thought. I played the role he wanted. Quiet, obedient, invisible. I stopped arguing. I stopped showing excitement. To him, it looked like I had finally surrendered. But inside, I was building something. Slowly, quietly, secretly. Silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was cover. And under that cover, my dreams were still alive, flickering like embers waiting for the right spark. School became my safe place. Every book I opened felt like a window to a world beyond his control. Every page whispered, "You are more than what he says." I stayed late at the library, pretending I was working on assignments, but really I was mapping my escape. Scholarships, competitions, part-time opportunities, anything that could help me build a life that wasn't chained to his rules. At night, I'd sit by the small crack in my bedroom window, letting the wind brush against my face, reminding me that there was a world out there, wide, waiting, free. And in those quiet hours, I made myself a promise. One day I will live a life that doesn't need his approval. One day he will see me, not as his shadow, but as his greatest regret. Opportunities began to come little by little. First, I won another writing competition. I didn't even tell him. I just tucked the certificate under my mattress, where it joined the first one he had dismissed. Then I applied for a summer program, secretly. I told him it was mandatory schoolwork, when really it was a workshop that taught creative writing and public speaking. Standing in that room, surrounded by people who listened when I spoke, who valued my words, it was intoxicating. For the first time, I realized my voice wasn't weak. It was powerful. Every time I returned home, I put the mask back on. Obedient daughter, silent shadow. But inside, I was no longer the same girl he thought he had broken. The real turning point came when I got older and discovered something he could never stop me from chasing: education. I applied for a scholarship abroad without telling him. Every essay, every form, every late-night application was fueled by his words echoing in my head. Girls don't need trophies. Girls need obedience. Fine, I thought. Maybe girls don't need trophies, but I was going to need a passport. When the acceptance letter came, I cried. Not because I was afraid of his reaction, but because for the first time, freedom was no longer a dream. It was a reality. Of course, he found out. I'll never forget the night he stormed into my room. The letter in his hand, his face red with fury. What is this nonsense? You think you can run away? You think the world cares about your silly writing? His voice thundered through the house, but for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I met his eyes, and for once I didn't look away. This isn't nonsense. This is my life, and I'm taking it back. For a second, he just stared at me, like he didn't recognize the daughter standing in front of him. And maybe he didn't, because that obedient girl he thought he owned, she was gone. Leaving wasn't easy. The guilt, the fear, the weight of his disapproval, it all clung to me. But I left anyway, and once I stepped into that new life, everything changed. At university, I thrived. I poured myself into my studies, my writing, my passions. I published articles. I gave talks. I even won awards that made national news. And the irony? Those very trophies he mocked me for became symbols of everything he failed to crush. I didn't just survive him, I succeeded because of him. His injustice, his silence, his cruelty, they became the fuel for my fire. Years later, something happened that felt like the universe itself delivering justice. I was invited back to my hometown as a guest speaker for none other than the same school where I once stood as a 16-year-old girl, holding that first essay trophy and shaking hands. When I walked into that auditorium, it was surreal. The same stage, the same lights, the same smell of polished wood floors. But this time I wasn't a scared teenager hoping for my father's approval. This time I was the keynote speaker, introduced as an award-winning writer and advocate. The crowd applauded as I walked to the podium. And there in the back of the hall I saw him, my father, older now. His hair grayer, his shoulders a little slouched. He hadn't come for me. He came because his reputation wouldn't let him miss such an event. But the moment our eyes met, I saw it. For the first time in my life, he couldn't ignore me. As I spoke, my words filling the hall, the audience listening in rapt silence. I didn't look at him often, but when I did, I saw it plain as day. The man who once told me girls don't need trophies was now being forced to watch his daughter, celebrated for the very things he tried to erase. And that was my revenge. Looking back, I realized my revenge wasn't about humiliating him. It was about outgrowing him, about proving to myself that his silence didn't define me. He tried to clip my wings, but he ended up teaching me how to fly higher than he ever dreamed possible. The sweetest justice wasn't making him regret it. It was living a life that no longer needed his approval. Sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people closest to us, but sometimes those wounds become the very reason we learn to rise. My father's injustice scarred me, but it also made me stronger. And in the end, the best revenge isn't anger, it's freedom. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. What's the most powerful comeback you've ever seen against someone who tried to break you? And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this.